This channel and video is sponsored by Ratchet Clothing. I'll put their link in the description below. Go check out their many collections. Today I'm going to be speaking about treachery and how the Coglianesi had the upper hand not only with Sicilian Cosa Nostra, but with ndrangheta as well. In the early days of the Coglianesi's push for power, one Palermo boss desperately made his rounds to recruit in an attempt to fight back, and that was Gaetano Badalamenti. Ironically, before the war, Badalamenti was considered an ally to the Coglianesi. In fact, while he was doing a little bit of time in Italy, Tortorino was doing hits for him. Obviously, that loyalty dissipated when he was thrown off the commission by the Coglianesi, and by 1981, he was considered their enemy. In mid-1981, Tomasso Buscetta received a visitor while he was living in Rio de Janeiro. It was his old friend Badalamenti. This visit followed the murders of Stefano Bontante and Salvatore Inzerillo, both who were considered the two top bosses in Palermo. During this time, Badalamenti himself was a hunted man. Back in Sicily, it was commonly known that he was on the Coglianesi's shortlist to be killed. Buscetta met with him at the Regent Hotel in Balam, and according to Buscetta, there was a sense of urgency in Badalamenti's demeanor. He basically tried to convince Buscetta to return to Sicily and conduct a counterattack against the Coglianesi. But to Badalamenti's disappointment, Buscetta wanted no part of it. He obviously left the meeting dissatisfied, but he would return in September of '82. Just like their last meeting, they met in the same hotel. Badalamenti made another attempt at getting Buscetta to join the fight against the Coglianesi. And once again, Buscetta refused to get involved. Badalamenti left Brazil once again disappointed. About a week later, Buscetta learned devastating news. Both his sons, Antonio and Benedetto, disappeared. He knew the life very well, so when he heard this news, he knew his sons were gone. Not long after, Badalamenti was back in Brazil to see Buscetta. Buscetta felt that Badalamenti may have pulled a Machiavelli move on him. If he had a hand in his son's disappearance, it would force him to get involved to seek revenge. This theory has never been proven and could have only been the thoughts of a grieving father. Badalamenti's thinking was, if anything would thrust Buscetta into the mix, it would be to avenge his sons. But now, even more so than before, Buscetta wanted no part of it. Badalamenti was determined to fight back, but he knew he needed help. In a final effort in seeking assistance, he decided to go outside Sicilian Cosa Nostra. And to get that help, he would look across the Straits of Messina towards Calabria, home to the ndrangheta. The person he would reach out to was Paolo De Stefano. During the 80s, De Stefano was considered the boss of Reggio Calabria. Badalamenti sent two emissaries to speak on his behalf with De Stefano, one being his nephew. Nevertheless, in contrast to Cosa Nostra, the ndrangheta consisted of multiple clans headed by multiple bosses. So naturally, De Stefano brought Badalamenti's request to the other clans. He also took the emissaries along with him on a trip to Gioia Tauro. At some point, he sat with Giuseppe Piramali, the boss of Gioia Tauro. With him was his number two guy, Domenico Brusis. Also at the meeting was Teodoro Crea, the boss of Rezziconi, Antonino Gangemi, who held the rank of Santista, a top-level position within ndrangheta. He also held a high-level position with the Freemasons. Speaking of which, the master Freemason Licio Gelli was also in attendance. He was the head of the Propaganda Due Lodge, better known as P2. He was someone who was involved in the Vatican banking scandal with Michele Sindona and Roberto Calvi. At the time of this meeting, most of the men there were fugitives. After weighing Badalamenti's request and the situation out, Gangemi convinced the group they took a risk in supporting Badalamenti. In the event that the Coglianesi were the victors, it would not be a good thing for them. Gangemi, of all people, wouldn't go against the Coglianesi due to his close ties to Giuseppe Pippo Callo. Although Pippo Callo was a Palermo boss, he made himself an ally to the Coglianesi. In fact, he actually was put on trial for Roberto Calvi's murder, but he was acquitted. Gangemi told the group that siding with Badalamenti, if things went wrong, would expose ndrangheta to serious danger. The most compelling part of this meeting is who had the final word on the decision. Licio Gelli. The ultimate decision maker out of all these ndrangheta bosses was Gelli, who most likely sat at the highest level of the organization, which is referred to as the Santa, basically the invisible structure of ndrangheta. Do we know this for a fact? No. Can we read between the lines? Yes. So once the decision was set in stone, what was their next course of action? They could have gave their decision to the two emissaries who would have relayed the message back to Badalamenti, but they took a different approach. Someone in that group sent a message to the Coglianesi, who in turn sent a hit team to Calabria. Supposedly, the two emissaries recognized the newly arrived men from Corleone, and realizing that they were set up to be killed, one of the men cursed and spit at Piramali. The emissaries were killed and loaded in the trunk of a car, but were buried somewhere outside of Gioiataro. Most likely, this is how Badalamenti received his answer. I'm sure at this point, he realized he made a mistake by going to the ndrangheta. Take note. Badalamenti could have easily made the trip to Calabria and gave his request in person, but he knew the danger in doing that, and he wasn't about to risk his life. But he had no problem risking the life of the emissaries, and as I mentioned, one was his relative. After this failed attempt, Badalamenti was said to have lost 11 relatives at the hands of the Coglianesi. They were never able to get to him as he bounced around countries like Brazil, France, the United States, and Spain. He was eventually arrested in Madrid in April of 1984 for his role in the pizza connection. On June 22, 1987, Badalamenti was sentenced to 45 years in a U.S. federal prison. He would eventually die in prison at the age of 80 in May of 2004. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please remember to hit the like button, and if you haven't subscribed, you could do that as well. If you think friends and family may find this video interesting, please share it, and thank you. Let me get this out of the way. Okay, till the next time. You can subscribe to the Sit Down News blog at sitdownnews.com, and I appreciate all of you who have subscribed. Thank you. If you would like to subscribe to this channel, you could do so down below. If you would like to subscribe to my other channel, Unlimited Substance Podcast, I'll add a link in the description to this video.